María Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, Economic Plan for Venezuela. Well, today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
Today we are going to explain the economic plan for the candidate, the opposition candidate that, according to some polls, is poised to become the next president of Venezuela, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia. Today we are going to explain how this hypothetical economic plan is going to unravel for the Venezuelan economy in years to come. On a previous video, we explained the economic plan for Nicolás Maduro, if the incumbent president of Venezuela, and he actually accomplished to retain the presidential power in Venezuela. Well, we already explained what will end up happening. Today, we are going to explain how this opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / María Corina Machado, their economic plans are going to unravel for the Venezuelan economy in years to come. The first thing that we have to explain, if this particular candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, former ambassador of Venezuela during the Hugo Chavez administration, now opposition candidate, and if you know anything about Venezuelan politics, you know that Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia is basically the cover candidate for María Corina Machado, this particular opposition leader that actually right now the most popular opposition politician in Venezuelan politics. She's a veteran from over 2 decades on Venezuelan politics. She is a center-right-wing politician. She is neither a right-wing populist or a free market libertarian candidate. Of course, she is very against socialism, communism, and that kind of thing. Let's go with a good thing about Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, that regarding the marketing and the perception towards the rest of the world, especially for Western nations, the sentiment will be positive. Since Maduro, the incumbent president, he's seen, the perception outside of Venezuela and actually inside Venezuela is that he's a dictator, a despot, a communist, and that kind of thing. In reality, it's kind of different, but I can understand why he has that particular perception. Meanwhile, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / María Corina Machado, they have a perception of being more free market, pro-business, that kind of thing. So the sentiment will be good for the relationships and the future synergy with Western nations like the United States, the G7, the European Union. However, and this is actually my favorite thing about this particular candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, is that first, he is a diplomat, so he understands that he needs to have good diplomatic relationships, not only with Western nations, but also with, let's call it, Eastern nations. Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia already mentioned that he wants, on a hypothetical presidential term of his own, that he wants great diplomatic relationships with China. He didn't mention Russia, but Canada, India, Turkey, and actually becoming representative for the BRICS plus nations. So that's a good thing, that if this particular gentleman becomes the next president of Venezuela, he will be in favor of Venezuela joining the BRICS plus group. So those are excellent news. So regardless of the outcome of the election, Venezuela is poised to join the BRICS nations on years to come. The economic plan of Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / María Corina Machado is called the Plan País, or country's plan. And it's basically to restructure the Venezuelan economy, leaving aside all of the bad things that created the 80% GDP collapse, and also halting further economic growth for the Venezuelan economy. Both Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia and María Corina Machado, they have been flirting with the idea of the chainsaw. This particular strategy, very popular thanks to the Argentinian president Javier Milei. That means slashing hugely the public spending of the Venezuelan government. However, the Plan País involves actually a lot of Keynesian economies. So that means that the Venezuelan economy still will be partially with some sort of government and public intervention, and also public spending. Actually, the plan from the first days for Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / Corina Machado, that particular plan involves fiscal spending from the get-go. Now, if you're listening this from the West, and you know that if you're a right-wing, libertarian, that kind of thing, you know that public spending is quote-unquote bad. However, these particular individuals, they want to address the situation, the dire situation of a significant cohort of the Venezuelan population that have been living on dire economic situations, even after the GDP growth since 2018, 2019. We are talking about public employees that are important for the Venezuelan society, like nurses, doctors, teachers, and that kind of people that contribute with their labor significantly to the Venezuelan society. However, they are not being economically compensated. And some public spending from the get-go, expansive economic spending from the get-go, is poised to happen according to the plans of these particular candidates. Something that you have to remember is that Maduro is right now the incumbent president, is quote-unquote a socialist. However, he reduced drastically the public spending of the Venezuelan government, and that included slashing benefits for the average Venezuelan and also reducing significantly the payments to the public sector. Other economic plan is reintegrating Venezuela to these particular organizations like the IMF and the World Bank. Since 2019, these particular organizations do not recognize Nicolás Maduro as the official, formal, and legitimate president of Venezuela. So that means that the government, the Venezuelan government, on this particular case, Nicolás Maduro, and their administration don't have access to loans and funding from these multinational organizations, just for the fact that they are, yet again, not recognized by such Western organizations. Also, the Plan País involves restructuring the foreign debt that Venezuela has. Right now, Venezuela has an outstanding debt of around 150 billion US dollars. This particular debt was thanks to bonds issued both by the country and by the state-owned company PDVSA. Also, there is a plan of foreign direct investments to Venezuela that right now Venezuela actually is receiving a lot of direct investments from places like China, India, Turkey, basically BRICS plus nations and their allies. However, the Western foreign direct investment has been lackluster on the past 7 to 8 years. We're still having Western multinationals investing on the oil industry like Chevron, Repsol, Morel and Prom, the French oil company, and several other Western companies, but still not as much because of the sanctions and the geopolitical narrative. If Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / Maria Corina Machado, they became presidents of Venezuela, that will incentivize and create a positive sentiment for Western investments in years to come. Now let's talk about the oil industry. It will be positive for a government of Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / Maria Corina Machado because many Western nations will be more incentivized in order to invest on the Venezuelan oil industry. Remember, Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, so Venezuela is very attractive regarding not only oil, but also other commodities that requires significant investments from abroad. And of course, right now we have the sanction schemes that will be relaxed and probably completely lifted by the US government, that the sanctions only affect the oil industry and a handful of other industries, with the Venezuelan government doesn't affect private individuals. Many people doesn't know this. Regarding international relationships, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, he is a diplomat, a career diplomat, so he will be very good managing these particular relationships, especially with Western nations like the United States and the European Union. However, he doesn't want to leave outcasted other significant players like China. He mentions that he wants to be a good friends. He wants Venezuela that keep having good relationship with China, and actually I think will be a positive thing Also, other countries on the east, let's say like India, and of course the rest of the BRICS Plus group, and also being friends with the rest of Latin America, not only the left-leaning political figures like in Brazil, in Colombia, and Mexico, but also with the right-wing politicians like we have in Argentina, in Uruguay, and El Salvador, Panama, and other places where they have, let's say, quote-unquote, right-wing candidates. The best thing, I mentioned this previously on the video, but yet again, it will be the international sentiment created for Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / Maria Corina Machado. Because many people, yet again, abroad see Venezuela as this draconian communist dictatorship that I can understand under a certain degree why the rest of the world have this particular sentiment. However, if these particular people, Edmundo and Maria Corina, they took over the Venezuelan presidency, that will create a very positive sentiment for investors, politicians, travelers, and regarding internationals. Let's put it that way. And also regarding the Venezuelans, not only the ones that will live here on the country already, but the ones that migrated. Remember, 7 million Venezuelans roughly live abroad in places like the United States, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Spain, and a bunch of others. So that will create the incentives for a handful of them, let's say 1 or 2 million, in order to be repatriated to Venezuela. Now, the implications of the further economic growth of Venezuela. Right now, we have an estimate, regardless of the next president, is that right now the Venezuelan economy is a little bit over $100 billion of GDP. It used to be close to 400 billion. It collapsed to 43 billion on the bottom on the late 2010s. And of course, we have seen some significant GDP growth year over year on the past couple of years, and the last 4 years or so. And since most of that 80% GDP collapse happened due to self-inflicted wounds, the risk of Venezuela contracting the GDP is actually almost zero. The worst case scenario is that Venezuela should be at least be stagnated and grow just a little bit. The conservative estimate is growing on the next 10 years, going from 100 billion GDP to an economy of 200 billion GDP on conservative estimates. Now, that this will happen, that Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia / Maria Corina Machado, they're gonna take over the Venezuelan presidency. Well, the answer is complex, but we will find out soon enough.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.